In this inspiration segment, we're going to be talking about how to live the life you love.
Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business.
Do you have a product or service that you would like to sell online? Or maybe you've been thinking about it, but you're reserved to do it because you need a website, you need complicated systems, and you need to spend money? Well, I've created a completely free course that teaches you how to use Facebook in a purely organic way. This means no ads and no money are needed. You can use Facebook completely free. So head on over to thrivinglaunch.com. Opt into my Profit from Social Media course. I'm going to teach you the free methods to using Facebook to make money today. Today's guest is Greg Anderson, somebody that I really appreciate and admire. He's serving the community in the relationship world, self-help world, and he's crushing it in the online world. He's one of the most successful guys that I've personally had the honor to meet and connect with, that is having success in all these different arenas. So it's my pleasure to welcome on Greg Anderson to the show. All right, guys, we are here with Greg Anderson. I'm so glad that you're here. Greg, are you ready to launch?
I think I am finally ready to launch with you guys.
Finally, that's awesome. You know, I've watched your story. It's interesting because I actually came across your work when I was really into the relationship field, and you had a podcast called The Selfish Divorce. You had a book called The Selfish Divorce. It was an interesting concept to me. And then following you, I've gotten an opportunity to see that you do a myriad of different things, and that you have this journey of like being dyslexic and not having a lot of opportunities to being this guy now that can afford having coaches that cost $100,000 a year, and you're selling and working with some of the biggest names in multiple industries. I mean, I'd love to hear how you created this life and how you've gone from somebody that was disadvantaged and then went through this divorce and had this difficult time to really finding yourself.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you putting me on the podcast today. It's fun to be able to share this and hopefully reach somebody else that has a similar background or can relate, especially when they lose hope a little bit. When there's, how do I get past whatever my disadvantage or whatever my issue is? It's one of the things that I love to speak about the most. You know, you mentioned it. I was in first grade when a teacher walked into my classroom while everybody else was reading and speaking, and she grabbed me and said, "Greg, will you come with me?" And I walked out of the classroom, walked down the long hall to the trailer outside where in reality, all the children that were handicapped were, including with me and one other person in class. And I didn't really necessarily realize what that was, but it was. Eventually, I found out after high school it was dyslexic, and they just told me at that point in time that I was holding other kids back. So I'd spent pretty much, 10, 12 years hiding, trying to be charismatic, trying to pretend that there wasn't anything else wrong with me. My entire life being told that I was something that inside I didn't really feel like I was. Like I was just told, you're just slow. And when I went to my counselor getting out of high school, and, she told me, Greg, college doesn't necessarily mean that it's for everybody. I was kind of just going to be the construction worker, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not how I felt inside, although I was told that that's all I would pretty much ever do in life. And it just didn't feel like me at all. I went through years of that in construction and work, and always feeling like that there was something else inside of me, until I finally bought a program that was online, or at this point in time it was television. I was working for a company in Texas, driving around installing food court signs in Walmarts. And I really hated my life. I was divorced at 20, my first divorce. I had 2 kids, child support, couldn't necessarily afford my car payment. And I kept watching this one infomercial over and over and over again. And it just happened to be Tony Robbins.
I knew you were going to say that.
It was the big guy with the big teeth, like, you can do this. At that point in time, I'd never spent any money at all on a self-help or a coach or anything. And this was like $160. So, which was not easy for me to come up with. I kind of scrimped and scraped and put it together. And then it was a 30-day program, and I kind of studied it like my entire life depended on it. I know my sanity did because I just was unhappy. Like life was just not good. When I got out of that, I really wondered, why did I learn so much? There was audio, video, reading. And this is the first time I started to question, was what somebody else told me true? Like, was I really that person, or really I just couldn't learn? Or was it that I just had to learn a different way? And it sparked kind of a couple of years of diving into it and figuring out I was dyslexic, and then figuring out how to retrain my brain, how to think, until I started just saying, you know what, guys, I'm going to question everything you guys ever told me. And that started this, 20-year-long personal development career to bring me really where I am now.
That's really powerful. A lot of us are told these stories about who we are, or the expectation of what we're supposed to do. I know most of my life there's been an expectation that, I'd have the 9-to-5 job, that I was going to be a particular type of person. And
then I came along and started brainwashing you into something else.
Well, you're taking all the credit here. There's so many other people, but yeah, you're a big part of that. And I resonate with what you're saying, and the incredible amount of courage it must have taken you for you to start asking these questions. And when you talked about, I'm going to question everything that's ever been said to me, or the things that you're telling me, it really made me think of Socrates and the story of Socrates, where he begins to question everything and ultimately leads to his death, right? And that's a threat, really. I mean, we could use it as an allegory to ask these kinds of questions. It must have been scary.
Yeah, it was something where I really had no support, family, buying things, trying new jobs as you bounce around from job to job or try a program. And pretty fast, people label you as the get rich quick scheme person because, like you said, the 9-to-5, it paid my bills, but it didn't feel like it was me. I wasn't creating enough value. I didn't feel fulfilled. And so as I kept trying things, there's a lot of the naysayers and the people just that it didn't fit with them. And that's okay, because they can live their life the way that they wanted to. Although there was a lot of leeway trying to sway me to lead my life the way they wanted to, not the way I wanted to. That was probably the hardest part.
Wow. It's such a really beautiful journey that you're spelling out for us. And it's not uncommon for us all to start with something that is a real sticking point, a real struggle, and just to see where you've come now. And I know that your teachings really center around living the life that you love. And what does that mean to you?
So I'll flash forward. So we ended school or ended that, and I started the self-development career. I went back to computer programming, all kinds of jobs, and finding myself in the midst. And then I built this philosophy in my head up until maybe 5 years ago, where I always thought if I made a lot of money, I was poor when we grew up. I was on food stamps and things like that. So my mind was always built around money. So my philosophy was kind of two-dimensional. If I had a lot of money and I had a hot wife, I would be happy.
It sounds like a lot of guys.
Yes, it just wasn't true. And it just shattered me. So when this ended, I still knew how to make money. And I was divorced now for the second time, questioning again everything. Was that true? And what other components of life are there? And so I connected with 3 or 4 other guys that were friends of mine in different areas of life. As I kind of grew, I met some, charismatic and powerful people. And we came together and said, look, we are self-employed men, all that have different problems. Let's come together as a mastermind group and figure out what we're missing. And through that, it really boils down to 4 main areas of life for me, which are body, that's health and fitness. It's being, that's your spirituality, your meditation, your mental clarity, your balance, your family, the people that you love, and then business. How do I always make sure I'm moving forward in there? So if I'm doing something and I have goals and I'm fighting or I'm pushing for those 4 areas, always trying to make them better, always hitting them every day, that's what creates a life that I love. In the past, and whenever I've worked with people that have 2 or maybe 3, if they're lucky, of these areas, what happens is we go to work and if money was our object and the family starts to slip. When the family slides down low enough, when things get bad enough, all the momentum that you now made at work has to stop so that you can go back and you fix your family. And so you end up on this big slide, or this teeter-totter, if you will, going back from health and fitness to body to family, and never actually raising all of those up at one time. And when you raise them all up at one time, that's when you start finding your purpose, like your soul purpose. And that's when you find love and passion and connection. And you know that when you go to work, you still have an amazing family at home that you're taking care of, because you're taking care of those things every day. It's pretty much just a checklist of life.
So what do you think is, as I hear you talk, I'm thinking, well, that sounds really nice, like this balance out of everything. It reminds me of when we sat with a coach and he had a circle with like concentric circles, and then it was split up into pie pieces, right? So it's a circle with a bunch of slices, and it's concentric circles. And he said, fill in, and each concentric circle has a number, right? So it's number 1, number 2, and then there's slices. And one slice represents family, another slice might represent money, and so on. And fill out in each slice where you're at within that concentric circle. So you might only fill in one little area of family, maybe three little concentric circles there, but not the whole thing, not the big complete outer circle. And then you go to the other areas, and eventually what you have is this wheel, right? That's colored in different pieces. But if you think of it as a tire, it's an uneven tire because we're not at a 9 or a 10 in every single spot. So if this wheel is going to turn, it'd be kind of rocky. And a lot of people think that's normal, right? We're always going to be kind of working and developing different areas, and we're going to be in balance. But as I hear you talk, I'm hearing you say, no, we can raise all of them at the same time and keep them all going so this thing functions well.
It's more like how a tide raises a ship. If you're working on everything can rise at once. And in the tire analogy, in that analogy, one of the components that I feel had always been missing is, as a self-employed entrepreneur, as most people are, or as a wage earner, we start to think of, say, the family portion as a weighted balance, like a balance scale. You put, a weight on one side and the other side lifts. And we think of that as time. I'm going to spend 50 hours at work, or 40 hours or 80 hours or whatever it is, and I only get 3 hours at home. So therefore my guilt, because I'm not spending enough time, is what's bringing that pie chart down. Instead of starting thinking about the quality of time that I spend with the time that I have. I'll give you an example. You come home, somebody's been working all day or doing whatever they do. They come home, wife and kids, or husband and kids there, and you're still on your phone, and maybe you're checking Facebook, or you're checking a little email, and you're not even 10% connected to the people at home. That time scale is what kills everything. But what if you come home and you're like, look, I know for 2 hours, no matter what happens, no matter how crazy or how big the fires are at work, the phone goes in the glove box of the car and I'm connecting with my family. That's when that pie chart starts to grow and expand, and it has nothing to do with the time you spend. All it has to do with the connection and the quality that you spend. This is certain things like in the new book that's coming out soon, Creating a Life You Love. Hopefully that's the final title, because I've been working on it for a while. One of the components of life and balance is just making sure that you're sending appreciation notes every day to 2 people that you love, whether it's your family or whether it's a spouse or a parent or somebody that's estranged, an old friend. These are check off lists of things that I'm doing on a consistent basis so that I know I can do it. It's funny in business where we track every dollar and cent. And any company that doesn't know their profit and loss statements and their cash flow analysis and their balance sheets eventually go broke. But when we come to our family, we just assume that we're doing what's right. I assume that I had the right conversation, or that conversation with my spouse. I assume that I spent the time with the kids. I assumed I spent the notes. But in reality, once you start tracking, you'll realize you're doing things like 30, 40, 50, 60% at best, instead of always tracking everything, like creating that task list, if you will, for life. Did I do this? Yes or no? And that's when really, like, the magic really starts to happen, is when you can follow your progress. Yes, I have been doing that. And when you start feeling, like things aren't going your way, you go back to the list and you realize, wow, I've only been, doing a quarter of the work, I need to get back to work again because this task or this checklist really works for me.
I love that you've taken something like a gratitude practice, which a lot of our guests have talked about. And I love these appreciation notes, sending those out. What a beautiful gift that you've just given us all by sharing that.
It's been great for my life.
Oh, I'm sure.
And one of the things too that really resonates for me with the appreciation notes is back to the work that I did with Dr. John and Julie Gottman and the marriage research that they did, as well as we had them on the show. So be sure to check on thrivinglaunch.com for that interview. But one of the things that Dr. John and Julie Gottman found in their research is that love is essentially like it's an investment, and there's an actual like emotional bank account. And if we keep investing in this emotional bank account and we're giving appreciation and spending quality time and investing in that relationship, just like anything in life, there's going to be points when things aren't quite as good and we're actually drawing more than we're putting in. But because we've invested positivity during these negative times, that emotional bank account doesn't go into negative. And so then the person is able to, maybe you're a little snippy one day or something, and the person that receives that kind of edginess from you has this emotional positive bank account towards you, so they don't really take it so seriously. Whereas if we're not investing in the relationship this way, that's when we're in a real dangerous area in any relationship.
It's very true.
I was just going to say, before we close out, I'm really curious, what is the one thing that you want to make sure that the Thriving Launchers walk away with today?
Oh, the one thing is that life doesn't have to be so dramatic and mundane and unhappy, even when you're building, even when things are extremely hard. One of the best tools that I was ever taught was to ask the question, how can I make sure that I'm having the most fun with this? Or how can I make this task more fun? Say you're at the gym and you just don't want to be there and it's hard and your mindset is falling and you're just asking the question, what can I do to make this more fun right now? For me, that means throwing on a couple extra weights and doing a couple extra reps. And I do that in business and I do that in home, everything that's so hard. And if we get into that mindset, it's so dramatic and we just don't want to be there. If you just ask one more simple question, a better question, it makes everything more enjoyable. I love to do everything that I do, even the hard things.
Really reminds me of back to Anthony Robbins when he says the quality of life is determined by the quality of your questions.
Yes, absolutely.
We've been here with Greg Anderson on the Thriving Launch podcast talking about living the life you love. Keep thriving, everyone. You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
Be sure to tune into next week's episode where I'm going to teach you how to make money from Facebook and how to make money from Facebook without a website, without a sales page, and no complicated tech, simply using Facebook in a purely organic way, and it won't cost you a penny.